Ozzy Osbourne, the legend, lost his long battle with Parkinson's that was making his existence torturous up until the end. So it's almost like he wasn't suffering anymore. And of course, there's going to be a sea of people making videos to capitalize off his death and to genuinely promote his career and whatnot. But I want to donate all the proceeds of this video to a fundraiser for Parkinson's research, which I will put in the description, as well as correct another wrong that's happened with Ozzy's career. I've noticed on so many review sites over the years that the original Ozzy solo career albums are sort of treated as like a joke. So for all the people that really didn't know Ozzy's albums and his music and where he really came from with this amazing, groundbreaking metal albums, let's rank them all. And unfortunately, we'll start with the newest until we go back in the day. So patient number 9, it's really not that bad, but the problem is that this feels extremely lackluster on every single song. It very much feels like it was written and recorded by AI, despite it having tons of amazing guest features from people like Zakk Wylde, which you think would have some rockin' ass tunes on here, which it almost doesn't. There's a lot of ballads, if anything. And then an Eric Clapton feature, which doesn't feel that groundbreaking. But where it goes very right is on the title track with Jeff Beck on patient number 9. And of course, the couple Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath features on here, which has some damn good Sabbath riffs. But it commits the cardinal sin of metal of having your best riffs be in the wrong parts of the song. You want your hook and your verse to have some colossal riffs, not the bridge. But the best song here is definitely Degradation Rules, another Tony Iommi song.
The album was a total surprise to me because it came together accidentally, you know. When I was to Andrew Watt's house to sing on a Post Malone track, Andrew said, "Do you want to sing on this album?" I said, "Yeah." And we wrote a bunch of songs. It was just effortless.
Now, of course, scraping the barrel here, we got to go with Ordinary Man right behind it. Now, this was a bit of a comeback for him commercially. This stuff just sounds like weird radio pop of the 2010s, and it just doesn't really mix that well with Ozzy. But objectively, for pop music, it's not that bad. It really isn't. There's some decent songs on here, like the title track, Ordinary Man, which, of course, has my boy Elton John on there.
I did it all for you.
Some heavier songs in here, you know, here and there, but the best song is definitely the last song, which is very divisive for people, but it's definitely the fastest one in here. It kind of sounds like a Motorhead song. It's a rage. I don't think they're completely unlistenable, but I think the fact that they had paired Ozzy with a producer of Post Malone and not like a guitar guy that's going to write some banger riffs is really a big problem. It's not like he was approaching it as a metal band at this point.
What else am I going to do? Start sitting at the end of the pier at Santa Monica here fishing? That ain't my vibe, man. I'll throw dynamite in and get all the fish at one time.
Speaking of approaching it not as a metal band and as a commercial product, here we are with Ozzmosis, and there's some solid songs on here. Almost every ballad on here tends to be the better songs, which is weird because Ozzy ballads are always the least interesting songs. We want him to rock the fuck out, and he just kind of does it on here. The best we get really is Perry Mason, which is a cool song about the detectives TV show Perry Mason. But like I said, the strongest stuff on here is the ballads, which after Mama Coming Home was a major hit. He just could not stop overstuffing his albums, and this was kind of the worst one of them all. But I will say, I'll See You on the Other Side is actually one of his best songs of all time.
The last album, Ozzmosis, I didn't really have a good time making it, so I was a bit reluctant to get back in the studio again, you know. I want to get a producer, but I want it to sound the way I want it to sound, you know. And Michael Beinhorn was somewhat of a dictator in the studio, where Tim Palmer was he was made it so much fun, you know.
Now, a lot of people bash this album, and yeah, it's not one of his most metal-sounding, guitar-heavy albums, but it actually is really solid. There's a lot of good songs on here that are catchy. Even the worst stuff on here, like Junkie, is kind of memorable. But I really love the moments that are guitar-heavy, where Zakk Wylde does cut through the kind of muddy mix, especially on Something That I've Never Had. And what this album doesn't really get the credit for is that the ballad Dreamer is actually one of his best of all time, despite it looking and sounding like another Christmas song, just like So Tired.
I haven't fallen out with Zakk. He's a very good. Our relationship goes way beyond music. I just wanted to. He's got his own thing now. He's got his own band. He's got his own career. It doesn't need me anymore.
Despite the modern production and despite Ozzy pairing himself with the producer of one of the worst bands of all time, Five Finger Death Punch, and I can just hear that awful production style all over this album, I cannot deny that Gus G actually kind of comes in the clutch and makes this album sound way better than it should have sounded. There's actually some bangers on here, especially, like I always say, the riffier, heavier moments on here. Crucify is badass, and Digging Me Down is a literal thrash metal song with the chugging on it.
Men and women enslaved, propagating the Messiah concept.
And even though it's corny beyond belief and overproduced to the high heavens, I kind of do like that song Soul Sucker, where they make the guitar sound like it's saying Soul Sucker.
I've been doing that for so many years, singing about environmental issues. So it's not a new thing for me. I mean, it quite makes me smile sometimes when people go, "Oh, I see you got out the satanic stuff." But there's a lot of people, that I think are very evil people.
What can I say? I'm a bona fide Black Rain defender. A lot of people hate this one and say it's the worst one because it's Ozzy trying to sound like Rob Zombie. But you know what? Unlike Five Finger Death Punch or modern pop music, I actually love Rob Zombie and White Zombie for that matter. And I actually think Ozzy taking a swamp-ass metal direction, it's kind of the groovier, nastier sounding riffs, and Zakk Wylde at the helm to deliver them, it makes sense to me. You can't exactly tune your guitars to E standard anymore with Ozzy's voice being as deep as it is at this point. Even some of the bonus tracks they left off are rockin'. The title track is dark and kick-ass, and we all know the classic hit song from here, I Don't Wanna Stop. Its weakest moments are the ballads, and unfortunately none of them hit the heights even close to Dreamer. So you're just kind of stuck there with boring until you get to the final track, the best song on here and the absolute underrated banger. A song that even people that hate later Ozzy will say, God damn, this one's good. Trap Door. So that wraps up the divisive and kind of underrated in some parts, as well as terrible in others, era of Ozzy after the classic period.
I'd love someone to be in Ozzy's head for a day. You would run down my ass in like 4 seconds. You'd find the nearest escape route. You'd you'd take a laxative. Get me out of here, because I'm mad.
So yeah, despite this being a very important and popular album for Ozzy, I actually think overall it's a little bit of a mishmash quality-wise across the track listing. Of course, I do love early Zakk Wylde with Ozzy before he became drudgy, detuned swamp-ass metal, but there's just too many ballads on here, and yeah, Time After Time is kind of catchy, and The Road to Nowhere kind of hits harder than ever nowadays. But Mama, I'm Coming Home is really the centerpiece here for the great ballads. Ozzy liked to pretend that this was a tribute to Sharon and him coming home to her. It was actually written by Motorhead bassist and vocalist and primary songwriter Lemmy Kilmister. And despite that terrible song Zombie Stomper, this album kicks ass is in its heavy moments like Mr. Tinker Train, the title track, and my all-time favorite on here, the banger Desire, which references the song Crazy Train.
I live for rock and roll. It's like my religion, and my law. It's all I live for.
I know it seems like sacrilege to put Diary of a Madman this low, but my biggest gripe with it is I have never liked that song, You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. But the rest of this album is amazing. Many people think this is the all-time greatest because it is Randy Rhoads, the legend, the innovator, at his absolute most creative and classical. Look no further than the title track where he does a classical intro that's super difficult to play, mind you. But every other song here is an absolute banger. Of course, the catchy classic song about smoking weed and getting high, Flying High Again. Some super underrated, really dark songs on here, like Believer. The title track's lyrics are some of the best lyrics that this band has ever done, and it's been disputed to this day whether or not Ozzy really wrote any of these lyrics or if Bob Daisley, the bass player that played on most of these classic albums, actually wrote the lyrics. And most signs point that Bob was kind of the creative genius behind those lyrics. But the true peak of this album is definitely the opening track and arguably my all-time favorite Ozzy song, Over the Mountain. A song showcasing what Randy Rhoads is all about. He was a guy bold enough to have the most raw, bare-naked guitar tone ever that could expose his mistakes at any corner with how fuzzy it sounded. And he didn't care because he played everything flawlessly.
It was over the top. I mean, everything was over the top. You look at any other band, it's like glam for days, you know, girly look.
The mid-'80s era of Ozzy is some of the most underrated metal ever made. A lot of people ignore it because Randy Rhoads had died by this point, the infamous plane crash, and they got Jakey Lee, underrated guitar god that didn't really do that many popular albums before or after this, so it goes under the radar, as well as Ozzy was kind of dipping his toe into the glam look, which really did not fit him considering he was extremely obese at the time. A fat ass, in fact. But the music on here does not reflect that. There's no power ballad to be found on here, and at worst you have some corny lyrics about rockin' again, but there were some very topical lyrics on here, especially with songs like Thank God for the Bomb, because they were in the middle of the Cold War, and an even better attack at the tensions going on between America and Russia with the song Killer of Giants. I've always had a huge soft spot for the song Fool Like You, but the one song that everyone will point to as the most commercial song on here is honestly also the best one because it's super melodic and honestly some of Ozzy's greatest singing. But you're a moron if you can't hear the talent at play here on the song Shot in the Dark, which was actually written by the bass player at the time, Phil Soussan, who went on to successfully sue the Osbournes for unpaid royalties and writing credits. This is where it gets extremely tough ranking these because, God, for a long time I actually had Ultimate sit at number 1. I loved it, but these next ones, oh God, it's gonna hurt. it's gonna hurt, but I have to pick this one.
I'm going to continue because Randy would have liked me to continue, so would Rachel. And I'm not going to stop because you can't kill rock and roll.
Bark at the Moon is so unique and interesting. In many parts, it's almost like a traditional metal album meets an 80s goth rock album. Listen to songs like You're No Different, and even the ending track, Waiting for Darkness, behind that guitar riff is some cool keyboards that really kind of sound like The Cure in parts.
Waiting for darkness. I'm waiting for darkness.
And yeah, the keyboards can be a little overbearing on this album. Don Airey layered it a little heavy, but I will say, when this album rips, it rips harder than any Randy Rhoads album. Songs like Bark at the Moon, Rock and Roll Rebel, even Waiting for Darkness, and my favorite song on here, the absolute tear-ass fuck you to Sharon Osbourne from Bob Daisley, Now You See It, Now You Don't.
Now you see it, now you don't. Now you see it, now you don't.
But the one song that people seem to make fun of on here is the ballad that I referenced earlier, So Tired, which I used to think was kind of a goofy joke as well. Until every single time I get tired throughout my life, that song has been stuck in my head, and I can't help but admit that I love that goofy, Christmas-sounding song. A song that actually got Ozzy into some medical problems, because when they did the music video, a shard of glass had flown from a mirror into Ozzy's throat, and I think it permanently changed his voice because it got way deeper after that point.
The day I got fired from Sabbath was at the time the worst day of my life, but then looking back now, it probably was the best thing that ever happened to me.
A bold choice, but I think a correct one to put this at number 2, not number 1. Now, many of you new fans, I would say you should probably actually start with this one. It's everything not only right about Ozzy and right about Randy Rhoads, everything right about metal. If someone wants to know what is metal, you point to songs that are stadium metal anthems, songs like Rock You Like a Hurricane and songs like Crazy Train, because metal is a badass guitar riff, nothing more, nothing less.
Waiting off the rails on a crazy train. I'm going.
And this album is just full of those. You, of course, have I Don't Know, an opening banger, Steal Away the Night, and even the corny-ass No Bone Movies kind of rules. But the best heavy, slow song on here is a song that got Ozzy into a lot of trouble back in the day because people thought he was encouraging suicide, even though a fucking idiot could tell that this song was discouraging suicide of any kind, especially through drinking yourself to death, which this song is about, because it's a suicide solution. Wine is fine, but whiskey's quicker.
Wine is fine, but whiskey's quicker. Suicide is slow with it.
There's also a lot of interesting dynamics on here. Randy Rhoads is coming in here with some interesting classical elements and epic orchestrations and ideas in the song Revelation Mother Earth. What's cool about Ozzy is a lot of his long epic songs were really just like 5 or 6 minutes, whereas other people do like 10 or so. But a very important song on here we have to talk about is the ballad, Goodbye to Romance. As many of us know, Ozzy did not exactly part on good terms with Black Sabbath towards the end of the 70s into the 80s. And this is one of the most depressing, somber ballads ever that could really just represent saying goodbye on bad terms to anything. And not in a sort of vengeful way, but in more so a defeated way.
I'm clean for once. Isn't that nice? Have you guys,
Is it always like this, or is this an exception?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Come on! Come on!
Yeah.
This is front to back the heaviest, most killer kick-ass Ozzy album with No slow songs, no obviously weak songs on here. Some people point to Crazy Babies, but that was one of the big hits on here, and it's pretty kick-ass, despite being a little corny, but in a good way. Ozzy had brought in Zakk Wylde in his youth, and all he really cares about on this album is playing super bluesy-ass metal riffs at high speeds, especially on songs like Tattoo Dancer. Dance for me, bitch! Now, when this album came out in the late 80s, a lot of even the hair bands were starting to dip their toes a little bit into the idea of mixing in blues and groove into their metal sound. You, of course, had Guns N' Roses come onto the scene pretty heavy with Appetite for Destruction, and seemingly at the same time, Motley Crue went for the same direction on Girls, 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 but at the same time, bands were thinking of mixing in these bluesier elements with even heavier metal. And it's so funny that people treat Zakk Wylde like he's tied to the hip to Dimebag Darrell in the shadow of his legacy. But at this time, Dimebag hadn't even come in with stuff like Cowboys from Hell going hard to the groove metal direction. Ozzy and Zakk seem to have done it first.
I could be just another stranger.
The best song on here, though, has got to be the super dark, atmospheric song that seems like it's harkening back to the good old days of Black Sabbath, and then coming in hard with those innovative, groovy riffs. A song the good old Manson family cult killing movie stars in their homes, Bloodbath in Paradise.
Watch what you do. 'Cause Charlie and the family might get you.
People will argue to their heart's fucking content whether or not Ozzy wrote any of the material that he's credited for writing. No matter what, Ozzy gave amazing vocal performances, and what he did write was classic, and his vocal melodies and the committee of members that made this Ozzy band happen were incredible. And this will be one of the rare cases where Ozzy will be just as legendary in life as he will be in death. There's no way he could get even more popular. He was the Prince of Darkness and the biggest icon of heavy metal, and above all, he was the beer thief.
Someone has been in my room and taken my beers away from my room.
I don't think so, darling. Who would do that? Who could possibly do that? Who's the beer thief? You. You're the beer thief.
Subscribe to the Downfall Network.